Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to completely demystify the U.S. stock market. Beneath all that intimidating financial jargon, the scrolling ticker tapes, and the flashing screens you see on TV, the actual mechanics of the market are surprisingly straightforward. By the time we finish this quick guide, you are going to have a rock-solid foundation of how this whole system actually operates.
And that brings us to the fundamental question we all have when we see those chaotic, shouting traders on the news. What is actually happening down there? I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? Screens flashing red and green, people frantically waving pieces of paper around, bells ringing loudly in the background. It looks like absolute mayhem. And honestly, it creates this illusion that the stock market is this hyper-complex, impenetrable fortress that regular folks just can't understand. But the truth, what is actually happening beneath all that noise is incredibly straightforward. It's really just a fundamental system of exchange that has been around for centuries, just, dressed up in modern technology.
So, to build up your foundational understanding, we're going to cover 4 simple concepts today. First, the 5-minute market guide. Second, what is a stock? Third, how the market works. And finally, fourth, steps for beginners.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the 5-minute market guide. We're going to replace that crazy financial vortex with a much simpler reality. So, instead of a complex, scary machine, I want you to think of the stock market simply as a giant farmer's market. Actually, fun fact here, early trading literally happened outdoors, pretty much exactly like a market. In fact, the New York Stock Exchange started with a bunch of traders just meeting up under a buttonwood tree on Wall Street. Picture your local weekend farmer's market today. You've got dozens of different vendors who set up their little stalls, and you have hundreds of people walking around looking to buy what those vendors are selling. Everyone is negotiating, they're checking prices, they're making exchanges. The U.S. stock market is the exact same fundamental environment. The only difference? Instead of trading fresh produce or homemade jam, people are trading pieces of businesses. That is literally it. It's just a massive, incredibly well-organized venue where buyers and sellers meet up to swap their cash for ownership in a company.
Which leads us right into Section 2, what is a stock? Because to really grasp this farmer's market analogy, we need to go micro and look at the basic inventory being sold at these stalls.
You hear this term thrown around constantly on the evening news. Shares were up today, or he bought 100 shares. But what exactly are you buying when you purchase a single share? When you hand over your hard-earned money, what tangible thing is actually coming back to you?
Okay, think of a business as a giant pie. A share is just one tiny, legally recognized slice of that pie. This means when you buy it, you literally own a piece of that company. You aren't just giving them a loan. You are officially becoming a part owner. If that company creates a wildly successful new product and the value of the whole pie gets bigger, well, the value of your specific slice gets bigger too. It's a proportional unit of ownership, so you get a fractional claim on their assets and their profits. It is an absolutely incredible concept when you stop and realize that regular, everyday people can own a tiny slice of the most profitable companies on the entire planet.
But there's a key rule here. Not all pies are for sale to the public. We really have to clearly distinguish between public companies and private companies. A public company is one that has decided to slice up its pie and let anyone, you, me, a teacher, a firefighter, buy a slice at our giant farmer's market. A private company, on the other hand, keeps the whole pie to themselves. Or maybe they only share it among a really small, closed group of private investors. So you can't just walk up and buy a share of your local neighborhood bakery if they're privately owned. The stock market is strictly for trading the slices of public companies.
Moving right along to Section 3, how the market works. Now that we know a stock is just a slice of a public company's pie, let's see how the overall market actually functions and connects everybody.
When people say the market, they're actually talking about different exchanges. An exchange is just a highly regulated marketplace. Think of them as safe, organized platforms where all of this pie slicing and trading actually happens. Over in the US, the 2 biggest ones you'll always hear about are the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq. Basically, think of them as the specific street addresses where our giant farmer's market is taking place. And because we're talking about billions of dollars changing hands here, these exchanges are heavily regulated. They have very strict rules to make sure nobody gets cheated, prices are totally transparent, and trades happen smoothly and fairly for everybody.
So every single transaction on an exchange requires 2 parties to agree on a price. You have someone who wants to buy a slice and someone willing to sell theirs. It is pure supply and demand in action right in front of your eyes. Let's say a company announces record-breaking profits. Suddenly, a ton of buyers want a slice of that pie, but the people who already own it, they don't want to sell. Because there are more buyers than sellers, the buyers are going to have to offer a higher price to convince someone to part with their share. And boom, that drives the price of the stock up. Conversely, if some really bad news comes out, everyone panics and wants to sell, and buyers are only going to take those shares if the price drops. So every single fluctuating number you see on a stock ticker, that's just the live, real-time result of buyers and sellers coming to an agreement on what one slice of that pie is worth in that exact second.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 4, Steps for Beginners, and see how all of this builds into actionable steps so you can actually participate.
Getting involved today is actually so much simpler than it used to be. Your money essentially takes a literal 3-step journey. First, you start with the money sitting right there in your everyday bank account. Second, you move a portion of those funds over into a specialized account called a brokerage account. And third, through that brokerage account, you officially place your order to buy a share on the exchange. It's literally a straight line from your savings to owning a piece of a public company. But, you might be wondering about that middle step right now. What exactly is a brokerage?
Well, because you can't just walk directly onto Wall Street with a handful of cash and ask for a share, you need a broker. A broker just acts as your personal middleman to safely handle your trades. Back in the day, this was a literal person you had to call up on the telephone, and they would manually go shout your order on the trading floor. But today, thanks to technology, a broker is usually just a highly efficient digital app on your phone or a website. You just log in, you click buy, and the brokerage software electronically routes your request directly to the exchange in a fraction of a second. They provide the secure digital gateway that connects your everyday bank account to that regulated farmers market we were talking about earlier.
See, understanding these foundational blocks completely strips away the intimidation. You definitely don't need a finance degree for this. You just need to understand the basic mechanics. The market is just a giant venue, stocks are proportional slices of public businesses, and brokers are simply the digital gateways to help you buy those slices. It's that simple. Which leaves you with one final, pretty exciting question to consider as we wrap up this explainer. Now that you understand the rules of the game, and you know exactly who the players are, what slice of the pie are you going to claim first? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep asking those great questions, and I will see you next time as we continue to break down the world around us.